This presentation is a close examination of the reading Marx, Capitalism and Alienation. The author's main argument, Marx's main argument, is that workers are alienated from the product of labor, the labor itself, from the power of the human-made world, from each other, and from our own human nature. Workers, are alienated from the product of labor. They become separated from the work, and work is no longer who they are. Work is different from a job. Marx surmises that workers will inevitably lose control over their lives by losing control over their work. He explains that in the pre-capitalist era, a worker, like a blacksmith or shoemaker, would have complete control over his product, from manufacturing it to selling it. He compares this to modern-day conditions in factories where he calls the workers not much more than a replaceable cog in a gigantic and impersonal production apparatus. In his mind, the workers have lost their relationship with the product and the people that produce them. He goes on later to say that this violates human nature itself. Workers are also alienated from their labor. We're only one small part of the manufacturing. People in the capitalist era are living to get out of work because work does not fulfill a need, but a use to gratify needs outside of work, such as shelter and food. Marx says himself that in the fact that labor is external to the worker, he does not realize himself in the work. He does not develop free or physical mental energy, but rather work mortifies and ruins his flesh. This is the difference between job and work. Work is something you do because you want to and because you enjoy doing it. A job is something that you use to fulfill needs outside of work. Marx compares work to an artist working long hours to paint a painting. He doesn't mind painting the painting because he loves doing it. A job is something that you are forced to do to gratify needs outside of oneself. Marx backs this up with the fact that work is shunned like the plague in the capitalist era as soon as no physical or any other kind of coercion exists. Workers are also alienated from the power of the human-made world. The author states that industrialization has created a world in which all human beings are dependent on each other and the human environment that they have created. One of the grievances against this human-made world is business cycles and market dynamics. In Marx's view, the market has become out of the worker's control. This is also called the invisible hand. The workers are at the whim of the stock exchange, like they would be at the whim of natural disasters like flood or famine. Business market confront workers in the fact that they are unable to control it. One can suffer hardship because the forces are beyond their control. What is not realized is that because of their own accumulated labor that creates and maintains these forces for the market, it is not a force of nature, but conscious man and man-made. In short, workers build the world that they are so precariously dependent on. Workers are also alienated from each other. Workers have no control over the product of their production because they own the means of production, as mentioned before when referring to the pre-capitalist times where the owner followed the product from production to sale. In the capitalist era, they are only part of the machine. They also have no significant control of how they relate to each other. They only follow what the manager or supervisor tells them to do. The manager delegates tasks so the workers cannot have more collective control over the product. One fact that the workers will always have to face is that they all have to compete for scarce jobs. This forces workers to have to look at each other as competitors for scarce jobs, making their fellow workers enemies. Lastly, capitalism alienates us from our own human nature. Capitalism estranges workers from human nature. According to Marx, it is human nature to produce freely. He states that to be human is to be free and think rationally. Free and rational thought is to be basically human. Human beings should be able to produce without external necessity making them produce. It is human nature to produce not necessarily because they have to, but because they hold the things they produce as beautiful. Only when humans rise above satisfaction of instinct and become enlightened about what it means to exist is the only way to be truly human. There are ways to work, but they are set up so we alienate each other or become part of a mechanism we can't control. Human nature or the labor we work. Basically, according to Marx, capitalism forces humans to produce because necessity, not because of want. Capitalism also alienates workers from the product they produce. If it is truly human nature to produce not because of necessity but because they want to, then capitalism violates human. I believe Marx's argument to be strong because I see examples of them every day in my daily life, in our culture, and in the media. A lot of people no longer work because they want to, they work for a paycheck. They spend their work week waiting for the weekend because to them the weekend is the only time they really live. You see this in movies and TV. I agree with Marx that work should be something you love to do rather than something you have to do.